2023 saw a major increase in the distribution of data services that included multi cloud expansion, the adoption of generative AI as a consumer level technology, and the increasing need to automate IT operations given the shortage of technical talent has prioritized the need to convert data into informational insight, and having to do so in real time. Traditional methods of serialized data processing won't be able to keep up with the demands on access to information, ultimately through data. I'm joined today by Eric Vogelpohl, Field CTO at Presidio, focused on data to discuss the most impactful events in the world of data in 2023. Eric, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Rob. Great to be with you. And indeed, 2023 was an impactful year in the world of data.
Thanks, Eric. Now we'll call this first theme Winner, Winner, Chicken Dinner. Now, up until about 2019, most data platform providers had been forced to utilize proprietary formats from storage manufacturers or cloud storage services and had to spend cycles tableizing their data. Until now, we are seeing a push to standardize storage formats managed by the vendors and storage service providers as storage class engines, allowing our data practitioners to focus on higher level data functions. Now, Eric, what are your observations on the impact on adoption, data portability, and growth in the analytics space based on the fundamental platform change?
That's right, Rob. We're in full adoption mode of the lakehouse pattern. The lakehouse being a new term, that's really just a combination of two things. One, saving data on your data lake. So that's the first half. In other words, data, not only source data, but now actually our table data, the actual warehouse data tables themselves are stored on open storage like S3 or ADLS in Azure. And then two, the warehouse side, right? So Lakehouse, the second half being warehouse, which is now just compute. So it's all the queries and the analytics and the jobs that run, and of course, all the data transformations that are needed to turn data into information. So now those are fully separate and for the most part, interchangeable even. And from an adoption perspective in 2023, we really saw this solidified when Microsoft made a massive update to their data estate. It's now branded Fabric. It's a collection of services. But at the core of Microsoft Fabric is what they call the One Lake, which is just a brand name. They've picked the Databricks Delta format for saving their data on storage. But it's essentially the same pattern that we're seeing across the board. The second big thing, really from an adoption perspective, is Snowflake made a lot of noise in 2023 that they've reached somewhat performance parity with regard to data stored in their format. They're a champion of a different format called Iceberg. It's neither here nor there. Versus the data that they used to store natively inside their own engine. So those now perform basically on par. Again, really solidifying the adoption of this architectural pattern. And I mentioned portability. Now that I've saved my data and tableized or schematized, if you will, made some structure out of my data in an open format, the format sometimes called Parquet, I can now pick any query engine that I really want. So there are probably 4 or 5 or 6 query engines that are available in AWS. There are 3 or 4 available in Azure, 1 or 2 available in GCP, tons of open source, tons of on-prem capabilities that can now read and write to that format wherever that data are stored. So I think the industry at large, to answer your third question from a growth perspective, has found a winning pattern. This concept, again, of saving the data unique and distinct from compute, allowing portability and interoperability across vendors, I think is great for the consumer.
That's some excellent insight. Now we'll call this next theme moving to the front of the house. Democratization of data access, including external services and entities, via protocols instead of traditionally designed discrete access privileges, is giving far greater access portability that is also cross platform, the truest sense of data as a service or a data exchange. Which is great because it eliminates the need to talk about the mechanics of managing access with data compliantly and focus more on simply getting the right data at the right time. Now, Eric, what are your thoughts on how this impacts the saleability of information instead of just data services?
Rob, indeed, it's an incredible time to be in the data world. For years and years and years, the data warehouse predominantly served internal constituents. And as you noted, if you had an agent of the company or a partner of the firm or a vendor, supplier to the firm, and you wanted them to have access to your data warehouse, you either shuttle in reports or CSVs, or you had to treat them like an agent of the firm and give them some type of a contractor ID or some other ID that allowed them to VPN and connect. So those days are now over. All of the major vendors have introduced and have really solidified their marketplaces. One of the most over memed trope in the data world is data as an asset. We've seen it a zillion times. It's probably printed on t-shirts at this point. But to really make data as an asset, the asset has to be consumable by such a wide audience. Snowflake is certainly in the lead with their marketplace, their data marketplace that allows you to, with just almost no configuration at all, barring good security patterns, to just save or share rather a data table that you have with, like I said, a partner or even a competitor or a consortium or anybody else up and down your supply chain that you want to share data with. And there's mechanics to govern costs and performance, et cetera. Databricks this year released their GA. They went GA with their marketplace. Microsoft, when they release and fully GA all the features of Fabric, will also have a sharing platform. So we now have the mechanics, we have the backbones, to answer your question, to truly make data sellable, if that's what you choose to do with it. These things can be monetized. You can buy the gigabyte or buy the terabyte or buy the login or buy the query. You could potentially think of multiple ways to sell your data. Though a lot of people will say, look, if it benefits the community and it's data that you have that doesn't necessarily represent any specific intellectual property, share it open on the marketplace, govern it maybe to 1,000,000 rows or something like that for practical reasons. But yeah, it is a very exciting time to be in the data space for certain.
Some really good points there. Now, this next theme we'll call freedom, quoting William Wallace. 2023 saw democratization of data really start to take hold, with the data mesh architectures becoming the standard. Because consumers of data services demanded access faster, and these traditional serial operations that were managed by the data team, data sourcing, cleansing, munging, classification, visualization, were just too slow. The decentralization of data services are evident in the new services that we see from other providers. Zero ETL, DataSync are prime examples. And as they made it so easy to be able to acquire data. Now, Eric, do you believe we have finally seen the end of traditional notions of serialized data management in favor of this new data mesh?
Yeah, Rob, I really do think we're in an era now where we're winding down the degree to which the central data management team did everything from source all the way through to producing reports. Think about what's going on in enterprises right now. I mean, you have marketing teams that need to adapt to crazy trends that pop up on all the social tubes. You have product teams, digital product teams that are taking telemetry from every mouse button, every finger click that you have on their digital properties, and they want to alter the experience. You have supply chain management organizations that are building these control towers. It's all data driven. They want to see where product is at sea, where product is on rail, where product is at truck. You have manufacturing companies that want to address defects in near real time. And Rob, this is happening simultaneously. This, get my capital approved and then get in line and then get my product work or my project work organized by a PMO. This serial approach to building data products is just simply not going to scale going forward. So enter the data mesh. And the data mesh is not a product. It's not a vendor. It is it's a way of organizing your data estate that really focuses on a couple things. One, and the most important thing it focuses on and it respects, is domain ownership of your data. So those domains I mentioned, marketing, supply chain, manufacturing, product, HRIS, I can go on and on. It's product, it's domain ownership of those data components, not just stewardship, but actual ownership, the ability to craft and curate the data that makes sense to that domain. And two, it recognizes that we can produce data products. And not all data products will look alike. Some data products might take the shape of just a handful of tables and some reports, and that addresses the needs of those data product constituents. Others, maybe in finance and accounting and finance planning and administration, maybe they need more manicured data products, and those are fine. So the data mesh architecture or the data mesh thought process, I think, came into its being in 2023. It certainly is a question we get from a lot of our CIOs and CTOs, and we're coaching our clients to consider it when they're faced with all of the burdens and the demands of organizations for data and insight.
We're in the home stretch now. This final theme we'll call Hands Off My Info. For several years now, data has been considered the new currency or new oil. But I do think that in 2023, it marked a time of huge increase in the data mining across an organization's data estate, and a lot of that being driven through the accelerated adoption of generative AI. Gen AI, more specifically LLMs, are pretty amazing at synthesizing and extracting insight from messy data, and that has provided real knowledge worker value. The flip side is that traditional methods of data governance weren't enough guardrails to protect organizations from data leakage, impact to brand and reputation, or even factual integrity. We have seen more executive orders, mandates, and legislations that are being written, including an increase in fines and penalties, especially as it pertains to consumer data. We saw this in the past with SOX 404. It essentially created a whole new industry. Now, Eric, can you point to some events that took place in 2023 that are shaping your predictions around data governance in 2024?
Yeah, that's right, Rob. GDPR started this many, many years ago. And of course, in 2020, we saw CCPA, which is California's Privacy Act. And then this year, we've seen many more. So we saw the creation of Virginia's version of CCPA, their Customer Data Privacy Act. We also saw Colorado's. Illinois introduced BIPA, which is all around the collection of biometric data, so face, finger, audio prints, etc. These have teeth, so these per infraction can run firms $7,500 and more, plus legal expenses, not to mention the reputation effect. So our coaching right now to customers that have and are collecting customer data is one, partner early with your governance team. Don't always think about the letter of these regulations. Famously, regulations don't give you prescriptive things that thou shalt have to do to specific elements of data like date of birth or social security number. They give you lovingly enough rope for firms to hang themselves, quite frankly. So partner early with your governance teams, focus on the ethical use and the fair use of collecting customer data. Keep your privacy, keep your policies very transparent. And there's lots of technology. There's policy management, there's data encryption, there's data vaulting, there's things that we can do at Presidio to help firms along the way. So yeah, going forward, these regulations are going to be a part of the data estate, and the time is to act now.
Eric, thanks again for joining me as we took a look back in 2023 on the major events that took place around the world of data. Very much looking forward to your 2024 predictions, so please stay tuned.